Bare necessities, simple bare necessities. Isn't it wonderful to keep life simple? By all these labor-saving devices, and all they do is cause us to work harder to save money to buy labor-saving devices, which seems like an inherent contradiction. We've created all these stupid devices to make our lives more simple, and all they've done is they've made them more complicated. Instead of like mailing a letter across the world, taking 2 weeks to get there and 2 weeks to get a response back, it's like, wow, I can do it instantly now. This is all wonderful. All that's true, except all the encumbrances that come along with it cause issues that make our lives more miserable. I like to keep things simple as possible. Mother Nature is really simple. I've kind of humorously said that Mother Nature is a hairy armpit chick with dreadlocks, a hemp skirt, and muddy feet. She doesn't use calculators. And there's a huge difference, by the way, between arithmetic and mathematics. Principle and attribute. Of course, you've seen these images endlessly. These are my images of magnets underneath the supercell. I probably have like 1,200 videos of the ferrocell talking about it. Here you can actually see a more powerful magnet. Here's the outline of the magnet, but with a larger hole, because more powerful magnet actually has a more powerful dielectric hyperboloid. That's the reason why this hole is so large. I've talked about that endlessly. Over here you can actually see one pole of a magnet and the other pole. I actually know that this is the south pole of the magnet and this is the north pole, because this is blue shifted and this is red shifted. But everywhere we see light underneath these images is where we actually see constructive magnetism. And everywhere we see black, we're actually seeing constructive dielectric, actually seeing constructive towards the plane of inertia or towards the null point. Yeah. Principle and attribute, the black underneath the ferrocell. Yeah. People confuse light and illumination. Everything in the conjugate principles through Mother Nature, and I like to keep this video really actually short and very, very simple. Kind of make a Star Wars analogy, and I'm not a Star Wars fanboy by any means. I'm not. I thought the movies, and still do think the movies, are kind of cheesy. I mean, I've seen each Star Wars movie probably 2 or 3 times. And there's people out there who've probably seen each movie like 100 times, which I think is kind of ridiculous. But the first movie is kind of cheesy. Let me make a perfect analogy, because people like analogies that they can relate to, especially when it comes to metaphysics and abstruse principles. It's the same reason why I use that radio analogy in talking about things. Light and illumination. Magnetism, the dielectric, the conjugate geometries of the universe. There are 2 darknesses. There's also 2 lights. And of course there's 2 selves. The self you see in the mirror and the self you're actually seeing in this video, made out of flesh and blood, the psychophysical corporeal entity, which has a beginning in time and has an end in time and is made of constituent components. And of course life is the consubstantiality between matter and spirit. Yep. And I've spoken endlessly about the fact that water is the dipole antenna which makes life possible. It's the dipole antenna for consciousness's manifestation, of course, which in the radio analogy is, of course, akin to the broadcast. Anyway, we have 2 darknesses, yeah? You have the one of, you have the darkness of the one, or the absolute, in reference to light, because people that think they understand what light is, they're actually thinking of illumination in their minds, not light itself, because there's the principle, and then there's the extrinsic attribute of the principle, like light and illumination. There's what the one is and what the one does, and of course does is kind of an inappropriate term, but there's a reason why the 2 first numbers of the Fibonacci sequence are 1 and 1, principle and attribute. The Greeks and the Pythagoreans actually perfected the understanding of this. They called it the indefinite dyad, or the euristos dyas. The other 2 called it ananke, or called it tolma. Anyway, there's 2 darknesses. There's the darkness of the one, and there's the darkness that comes from shadows cast by matter, as there is the case, as I just got done talking about, 2 selves, the existential self, the corporeal self, and of course the transcendent self. And this is why people that know nothing about metaphysics get so extremely confused, because you'll be talking about one self and they're thinking you're talking about another self, and vice versa. Platonism, Pythagoreanism, Advaita Vedanta, original Buddhism, Egyptians, they all taught about 2 selves. Even the Bible, actually, I think there's a dozen different references of talking about the 2 selves. I can't remember the book and verse. But I know there's like 12 or more citations from that, even from the Bible. So let's use a little Star Wars analogy, kind of a little bit of humor here. Remember when the good guys, Yoda and the other people, they'd say, the Jedi, they say, "May the Force be with you." Well, if we're actually getting down to nitty-gritty, the people that wrote Star Wars, whoever wrote it, I have no idea. I should know stuff like that, but I really could care less, honestly. They have everything upside down and backwards. You see, the good people were actually saying the evil stuff because force, i.e. magnetism, the actual centrifugal divergent force vector that actually gives you light over here, which of course we're seeing illumination, not light. The true light, of course, is right here, the light of the one or the absolute. This is the same problem where people confuse the two selves, the existential self versus the transcendent self. Yeah? The transcendent self in the case of the radio would be the signal. The signal is not the same as the broadcast. The broadcast is the interpolation of the radio, and of course gathered by the antenna, and of course is the SNR, the signal to noise ratio of the gain of that signal. But the signal is not the broadcast. The existential self that you see here is not the transcendent self. And of course there's two darknesses. There's the darkness of the one. There's references to this in countless passages in Advaita Vedanta, the principal Upanishads, Rig Veda, Thura Veda, Samaveda, on and on and on and on. They call it the dark sun, in reference to the unmanifest agathon. That would be right here and everywhere you see black right here. This is where we have constructive dielectric. Everywhere where you don't see light here, yeah, is constructive dielectric. Constructive dielectric, excuse me. The darkness of the one, and of course the darkness cast by shadows. So in the case of a little Star Wars analogy here, they say, "May the Force be with you." That's like saying, "May the evil be with you," because what is force is directly equivalent to magnetism, because magnetism is a centrifugal force and motion vector, which gives mass and magnitude and volume, and of course thence matter, and of course which creates shadows. The worldly shadows, not the transcendental shadow of the unmanifest one, i.e. the agathon or the absolute. You could use the word God, I don't care. I'm talking about light, not illumination. Because illumination is going forth, magnetism is going forth. So in the Star Wars analogy, when they said, "May the Force be with you," this is no different than saying, may the evil be with you. Because they got everything upside down and backwards, as people that are, of course, unfamiliar with metaphysics commonly do. And when the evil people like Darth Vader and the other bad folks, and they say, "Feel the dark side," well, that would be talking about feeling, joining with the one, the unmanifest one. If there are only two things in the universe, the sun and yourself, and you're hovering out in space somewhere, relationship to the sun, kind of close, where you're not burning up in a spacesuit, for example. You had your back to the sun. Everything would be total darkness, even though you have like the most powerful light source imaginable behind you. There's nothing but darkness. Don't take that analogy too far, of course. If you turn around, of course, you're going to see the light of the sun, but you're not going to see the light of the sun, you're going to see the illumination. The only shadow that there's actually going to be is, of course, that cast by yourself. And of course, there's not going to be a shadow if there's only the sun and yourself in the entire universe, but the illumination that manifests due to dielectric magnetic permeability and dielectric permittivity is, of course, that which is the resistance of the mass and matter which makes up your body. Of course, with nothing else other than the sun and yourself, there would not be a shadow. Let's say all of a sudden you're standing on a platform or something, then all of a sudden, of course, you're casting a shadow. Anyway, two selves, two darknesses, it's on and on. The conjugate geometry of the universe, the dielectric and the magnetic, force and motion, i.e. magnetism, the toroidal vector of the creation of space. Because all space is the after effect of a divergent magnetic field. The expanding torus, i.e. the force geometry of the creation of space, just like this apple. This apple is nothing other than oblate torus. Yeah? But this oblate torus in this apple, of course, is not a real apple. It's a gold-covered apple made out of plaster. It has the exact same phase geometry disparity over here. We actually have a volume of phi. Down here at the bottom of the apple, we have a volume of 1. Same thing in the case of the magnetic field. This is due to geomagnetic precession, also too called Lamour frequency. This is also too the reason why seed exposure has radically different results from North Pole exposure versus South Pole exposure. So, nature's power, the spatial footprint of light. Low power and high volume. I don't know if you know much about frequency and wavelength regarding light, but the higher the frequency, the smaller the spatial footprint. The greater the volume, the less the power. People have everything upside down and backwards. People think of, the mushroom cloud of a nuke going off as power, but that's actually the impotency of power. And of course, if you actually eliminate out the column of a mushroom cloud, the only reason why it rises is because of the heat. A mushroom cloud is nothing other than a supergiant torus. If we actually say we have a softball-sized lump of fissionable uranium or plutonium, and of course it releases its energy, i.e. inertia, equivalent thereof analogously, we have this super enormous mushroom cloud. But what people call a mushroom cloud is only due to the fact that it rises due to the heat, and it has that stalk where it originates, which of course is the vapor. But if it didn't rise due to heat, and it didn't look like a mushroom because it had a stalk on it, which of course it does look like a mushroom, it's nothing other than a supergiant torus. Isn't that fascinating? I don't know if anybody else has actually ever mentioned that. Someone might have, about a mushroom cloud from a nuke going off, but it's just a super expansive torus made out of radiation and heat, but it's a torus nonetheless. This is the impotency of power, which creates shadows, loss of energy or inertia, because that's all magnetism is the dielectric field, the three-dimensional force vector of increasing force and motion, i.e. centrifugal divergence. The loss of that energy or inertia, the conjugate geometry of the universe, the dielectric and the magnetic. Everywhere we see the absence of light is where we see, this would be akin to the absolute, the unmanifest one. This is the blackness of the agathon. Yeah. This is the reference from, I hate to use the word occult, from people like Agrippa and others. They talk about the black sun. We're talking about the unmanifest one, the invisible sun of actual genuine power, which is antecedent to all forms of phenomena. People only see things due to the resistance, i.e. the magnetic permeability and dielectric permittivity of light manifesting. Like I said in that analogy of only two things in the universe, yourself and the sun with your back to the sun, there's complete and total darkness. Light only manifests as illumination. The illumination, of course, is the extrinsic attribute of the absolute. So, I wanted to use that little Star Wars analogy there about may the Force be with you. I mean, even at an early age from the old Star Wars, I was like, they have that backwards. When the good guys are saying, may the Force be with you, that's like saying, may the evil be with you. Because force equals evil. Force and evil are the same thing when it comes to metaphysics, actually. Magnetism is the extensive principle of evil, of expenditure of energy or inertia, which manifests as magnitude. The torus of mass and magnitude is, of course, the loss of energy or inertia. That is the principle of evil, the extrinsic attribute of manifestation. Manifestation, of course, due to primordial agnosis in the case of Pythagoreanism, monism, i.e. Advaita Vedanta, the teachings of Plotinus, Numenius, on and on and on and on and on. The Epiphysian and others. So, think about that. The two lights and the two selves. There's this conjugate pair that people always confuse. They always confuse energy with the impotency of energy. They confuse the transcendent self with the existential self. They confuse the shadows cast by matter and phenomena with the absence or shadow, and it's not a shadow. Of course, a shadow is not a thing. A shadow is an absence of something. There's no such thing as a shadow. These are the concept reification that human beings have been engaging in for countless thousands of years. Things that don't exist, magnetic attractions, waves, shadows, emptiness, chaos. There's 9 principal things that people think about and talk about all the time that have no existence in Mother Nature's handbag whatsoever. Waves. There's no such thing as waves. Chaos. There's no such thing as that either. Space has no properties, Nikola Tesla quote. He's right, space is not a thing. What is space, by the way? Space is the after effect of a divergent magnetic field, is the negative image of eternity, of everlasting immortality. Of course, immortality, of course, is an inappropriate word, really. Amata Gamimaga, the path to immortality. And literally falling towards the one. Increasing inertia and acceleration towards where illumination no longer exists. There is only light. Because you see the light here, but the true light in the case of genuine metaphysics, vis-a-vis the Platonists, the Greeks, the Indians, on and on, true light is this black spot right here and this black spot right here. Well, that's not light. I just see a black hole there. That's the actual light, because I, as a metaphysician, do not confuse light with illumination, because illumination is the extrinsic attribute of same, which must be cut off. The only reason there's manifestation is due to that extrinsic attribute where illumination is made manifest. And illumination is only made manifest due to phenomena. But why are phenomena manifest? And why is illumination manifest? Of course, you can go on and talk about this for countless hours. These are the fundamental principles of coming to the understanding of the nature of natura naturans, or conventionally Mother Nature. I hope I kind of made that simple. I just wanted to make this video kind of simple and lighthearted, if you will. Someone will say, it's still too complicated. I didn't mean for it to be too complicated, I meant for it to be simple. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you'd like me to go deeper on this topic. Because I try to keep it simple, and people say, you made it too complicated. Like, I did? I didn't think I did. I meant to do the exact opposite. Thank you.